to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
I've been doing this podcast since September of 2012, and boy, are my lips tired.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
So yeah, I always knew I wanted to get here. I just didn't know what it would look like. And what's amazing now, it's still evolving and changing and just saying, how do I continue to make impact, not only just for me and myself, but others in life as well too.
Absolutely. Now, when you look back and think about the people you knew when you were at that minimum wage level, obviously that's where you were getting your initial introduction to what life is like working with other people who are at that same kind of level. You got a very good sense of the mindset, of the problems that people dealt with, of the blocks, the limiting beliefs, all that kind of thing that people dealt with. And as you look back on it now, can you point to things along the way that began to differentiate your success from their success or lack thereof?
Yeah, I would say probably when it comes back to mindset, I was able to do some inner work and research on fixed mindsets versus growth mindsets, which is really in a basic term, victim mindset or abundance mindset, being somebody who looks at life happening to you versus for you. I think a lot of people, even back whenever, I was 17, 16, starting in the business, there was still this idea of entitlement. You'd like to have more and you want more now. And gimme, gimme, gimme as fast as possible. I wasn't really too concerned with getting it as fast as possible. I just knew I wanted to be in a better place one day. And I wanted to really work hard and apply that. And I think that when you look at life from a growth mindset standpoint, and you could shift that perspective of life happening for you instead of to you, you have this internalization of realizing that 90% in my beliefs and in my truth, quite frankly, is within your control. So how you show up, how you interact, how you live, that determines where you ultimately get. And people forget a lot. They just have this constant world going on around them that everything that you're creating happens in the present moment. So what you want next month or 6 months or 3 years from now is literally being dictated by how you choose in every present moment. So I was very intentful. Thankfully, at a young age, around the age of 25, it started to kind of click for me that I can control my environment. And I was okay with it not happening overnight, but being able to have the grand scheme of working towards something, knowing I'm not going to get it overnight, but that it's going to be built upon. And then as you set off on that journey and you take in all around you, you're learning, watching that entire master creation take effect. And it's important, I think, to pause and just reflect on where you're at in that journey, which is what I do routinely now. I wouldn't say I always did in my mid 20s, but that was a big difference, is growth mindset, fixed mindset, and life happening for you versus to you. It's a very much more empowering way to live versus it's their fault, it's his fault, that's why I didn't get it. It's just look yourself in the mirror, put it on you. Sometimes there are things you don't control, and even then you can say, how do I learn from this and become better, even in the things that you don't control.
Oh, that's really good. I like that. I'm also gathering, since you are vice president of the organization, I'm kind of like making some assumptions here. You tell me where I'm off base, but it sounds like you actually came up through a system rather than starting the whole thing as a new company yourself.
Correct. Yeah, I was a team member, a shift manager, an assistant manager, a general manager, a certified training manager, an area coach, an area supervisor, an ops consultant, a director of operations, and now a division vice president. So it's been a journey, and that's been through two companies of the fast food business. So that's all I've done. Worked for two great corporate organizations that have helped develop me. And at some point, I actually dropped out of high school, and it was a whole different story. Being in a bad place, not really understanding life yet, still being in a fixed mindset, and it was the only time in my life when I ran away from something. But it was the right move in my life at that time to get out of the environment that I was in. And I took stock of the moment. I could have easily become a statistic, a failure, which I didn't want to have happen, of course. So I kept persevering, pushing past all of that. But thankfully, the companies that I've worked for, the two companies that I did, they had a great development program that taught me all the things about business, from real estate and finance and construction and development and HR and accounting, you name a department that comes to business. I was getting that education as I worked along because they believed in investing in their people. So by the time that I was getting these opportunities, as I kept moving up the ladder, nobody asked me for that piece of paper, that proverbial piece of paper to prove that you're qualified to do your job. In my world, it comes from the experience and the success, which then builds credibility and lends you towards more opportunities. And ironically, to become a generational first, I did go back to college. When I dropped out of high school, I got my general education diploma, my GED, and then worked hard for a few years. Started my college education around 27. It was on again, off again, and I finally finished it at 34. Got my bachelor's in business and management, and I'm like, man, I actually paid a lot of money for a piece of paper that I was already taught by the business, but I just wanted to be a generational first. I was proud to say that I finished college even after being a high school dropout. I didn't want to give up on education, but I do teach and talk a lot about now how learning should never stop unless you choose it to. So I don't care what level of education you have, you don't have to stop learning.
I think it's really significant that you basically rose to your heights the old-fashioned way. Well, there's two different old-fashioned ways. There's where the guy went out as an entrepreneur and struck a new field and did a whole new thing and created a company, and the company grew and exploded and all this kind of, we know those kinds of stories. But there is also, this is like the throwback to my dad's generation. My dad worked his entire life for General Electric, 44 years at one company. That doesn't happen anymore. I mean, that's like really, really old school. But you kind of did. I mean, it's two companies rather than one, but you've kind of done the same thing. You worked your way up within a company. That's almost like unheard of anymore. But it's also, I think, an important story because I think it proves that, yeah, that might not be the way everybody can get to where they want to go, but it's still available.
It is, and people call me an old soul. Maybe I am. I'm 41 now, but even people at my age don't always stay put on one level. And I don't really judge it. I do think that times are shifting and ideologies change. There's a lot to gain from working in different places and having diversity of thought and then taking that and going somewhere else. But there's also something to be said for, I like the people I work with. I like doing what I'm doing. So I'm not going to keep chasing whatever it is that you're really trying to strive for, unless it's a really good innate soul level kind of thing. So what I mean by that is just having the understanding of what is it that matters to you. At some point for me, it clicked that it wasn't about more money. It was about serving others and trying to have people understand in this business, it does not need to be a dead end job. Part of why I still do what I do is to prove a point that you can make something of yourself in the restaurant business. It's not this big bad corporate America that's trying to screw it to the man and pay you the minimalist amount of money possible. I am proof of that. Yes, you got to work hard, but it's a great life and a great career to have in it. So that's a lot of my motivation for why I still do it. But I don't judge others who job hop and move around. Just for me, I'd rather stay in one place, continue to earn credibility, experience, as long as it's a good place that takes care of people. The day that I'm no longer happy and don't like where I'm at, well, I'm going to change it. I'm going to move on. But I'd always ask yourself, hey, what's your reason for wanting to change? What are you chasing? What are you going after? So if you evaluate that, you can make some better decisions, I think.
Well, definitely, no doubt about that. And it's the right question to ask, too. There's another important question to ask as well, I believe, which is, well, I'm going to come at it backwards. I'm going to come at it from like the reverse side. And that is, I'm going to ask you, why is it that other people who come up, I'll call it climbing the corporate ladder, that used to be what it was called, who climbed the corporate ladder like you did, why is it that so many of them burn out and you haven't?
I think that's that inner purpose. It's that, hey, we're not in our zones of genius. We're not in our zones of brilliance. I reference a lot the teachings of Gay Hendricks. He has that great book, The Big Leap. I think he's since come out with a sequel called Your Zone of Brilliance, or Find Your Zone of Brilliance, which he talks about a lot of us get to this zone of excellence. And why I think burnout occurs is that we're good at doing something, but we don't love what it is. We feel like we're always chasing, and we're not sure why we're chasing what we're chasing. And a lot of it comes down to, what are you here to do? And even in the organizations that may not fit 100% aligned in terms of what your purpose and meaning is, you can find ways, I think, within those organizations to enact change, to create a big difference, to actually really take on new meaning. And in some cases, there could be a few where things just don't align and you can't do that. So maybe you create a side hustle, maybe you create some time for yourself to actually have meaningful contributions inside of your community and look for other make a difference type of situations. But that's what I think it comes down to, is that we also are believing that we have to work and grind, that life is a grind and there's never enough time. Those are all mindset beliefs that need to be deprogrammed or ungraduated from, which I talk and teach about, because we're mentally programmed to think that life is a struggle and that life is a grind. And if we get that subconscious programming going, we're not looking for the reasons to just pause, become still, say, what is it that I can do in this business that's going to create good life harmony? And that life harmony is what I have substituted for work-life balance, because I feel like when you wake up every day, whatever your purpose is, you're going to go strive to do it. So in my 700 restaurants of responsibility, everywhere I go, I don't have an office besides at home. That's where I'm at here, but our headquarters is down in Atlanta. I'm only there once a month. I get to get up out of bed every day and go talk about purpose and goals and helping people accomplish those things, because I've been able to do it in my own life. So I think you find what it is you are passionate about and what you're really good at, and you make that a point to bring it into your business where appropriate and where you can. And again, sometimes you've got to reevaluate, but if you're in that zone of excellence, it seems good because you're loving life. You think you have a good pay, good home, all those things, but you feel a little bit hollow and empty inside. And that's where that burnout can occur, because you're like, well, what's next? Get to the zone of genius, lean into what your absolute strength is and find a way to apply it, either entrepreneurial or into your corporate business, whatever it might be. I would hope that that would avoid a lot more burnout, because you're going to feel a lot more purposeful in what you're doing. That's when that aspect of life or work becomes less, it's just not about work. Like, this isn't work to me, even though it's taking up time. I love talking about these things. So it's nothing for me.
Yeah, for me too. I know totally what you mean by that. And I love the word ungraduated. I'm not sure where you got that one from, but I mean, you hear the word, you know exactly what you mean by that. It's very, very clear. You're basically unlearning. That's what I used to call it when I was going through my little thing a few years back. I had to unlearn everything that I was taught, because everything I was taught was wrong. It was not working. It was not leading me in the direction I wanted to go in. But you also mentioned something else that I really like, and I want you to kind of expand on it a little bit. You talked about finding your passion. And the reason I want to expand on that is that's something a lot of people, well, first of all, these days, I think most kids coming out of school, they aren't even on the wavelength of following their passion. Everybody is pretty much taught, go for the money, go after where the bucks are. And that's what they're all trying to do. They're trying to find the right field that gets them the bucks and so on and so forth. And I think really that's one of the major sources of why people burn out, because they're just going after the bucks. Going after the bucks doesn't actually feed the soul. It doesn't fuel you. So you're basically running on fumes at that point. But when you throw out the phrase, go for the passion, you get blank looks, which I understand perfectly. I mean, I remember when I first asked myself that question, it was fairly late in life. I was in my 40s before I finally asked myself what my passion was. And I didn't know. And I couldn't give you the answer on it. It took a long time to figure out what my passion was. So if somebody asked you, how did you find your passion? How would you recommend I find mine? What do you tell them?
Great question. Let's first start with, what do people tell you that they like about you? Think about this. People are so darn self-critical. We have that inner critic inside of our heads constantly telling us what we're not good at. Sometimes we're being lied to by that inner voice inside our heads. Look at what people compliment you on. What do they appreciate about you? Where do you get and receive recognition? At least give yourself some celebratory means to actually pause and say, what is it that I'm good at? And then say, are those things that I'm good at aspects of a passion that I can bring towards others? For me, what I am good at is talking to people about perspective, talking to people about mindset, talking to people about life, big picture thinking, philosophy. I've always been that person people would come ask these questions to, and I didn't really tie the dots together back in my mid 20s or even late 20s. It started probably in my late 20s as I really began to connect the dots. But once you can understand what it is that excites you about life, what would you get up every day to do for free if you could? That's where I think you begin to start with, that's what your calling is, that's what your purpose is. And for some people, it's as simple as be with my family, spend time with my family. So you want to provide for your family. It doesn't have to be some grandiose, overarching, world-changing type of thing. But for some people, it is those things. For me, it just happens to be inspiring a spark, planting a seed, getting the wheels to turn that can help people accomplish more empowerment out of life. But I think then once you define that North Star, it does come down to, and I have this in the book, it's called It's my why model. So you hear about the word why. What's your why? Well, what's the world need? So that's the W, world need. If you could fix a world problem, what would it be? The H is heed your talents. What are you good at? What are you good at that can help solve that world need? And then yearn after that passion. That's the why, the yearning part. Every day you're yearning after that purposeful intent with your passion, with your talents to try to solve the world need. It's also framed as this term ikigai. It's a Japanese term that really was westernized as how do you find your North Star, your vocation. It's a world need. You happen to be good at it and you can be paid for it. So it used to just be what's your one reason for being, but now it's this nice quadrant of a circle for world need, your vocation, what you're good at, and can you get paid for it? Because that's the perfect alignment. If you could wake up every day and get paid for what it is that you love to passionately do, what an amazing life it would be. And that's it's not impossible to do. It is something that can be done. You got to frame it up correctly. And then it does kind of have to, the last thing I'll say about it, you got to think about it can't be just for the money. You have to love it and do it because you love it. And then in terms of service towards others, I call that your currency. That's where you, with your goodness, are bringing value to others, which then is reciprocated as you connect with more people, and it comes back to you tenfold. It's the magic of this thing that we call the human journey and experience. Money comes into my life without me even trying anymore. Well, it's the best thing ever, and I'm just using it for more goodness. I don't have to better my lifestyle. I've already identified my life's pretty darn good. Am I a billionaire? No, I'm not even really a millionaire, not yet. The point of the matter is I could be if I wanted to, but it's not for selfish reasons. I'm going to maintain this quality of life I have some new things brought in from time to time to enjoy this thing called life. But my main mindset is set at how do I serve others, make their lives better. And then the money, it just comes to you so that you can keep doing those things. That's my truth. It's not my theory. It actually works for a lot of people that way.
I love that. That's great. I want to take a moment to recognize some people in the live stream. I see Pete's in there. Hello, Pete. I see Jeffrey. Hey, Jeffrey. How you doing? I see Monique. Monique was actually a guest yesterday on the show, and here she is jumping on the live stream saying yes, yes, yes to everything you're saying. She's loving it. So great to see you too, Monique. Yep, we love you too. I was especially enjoying what you were just talking about there about how you basically piece together what your passion is. One of the things I did myself, and it takes time to do it, is I kind of mentally tried things out because I was really having trouble identifying what it was that I would enjoy doing that could also make money. And in the long run, I was able to kind of piece it together, but I had to try things out. I had to create little mental scenarios. So what if I did this? And then I'd play it out in my mind. Well, what if I did that? Play it out in my mind. And you can actually drive yourself crazy a little bit that way just by trying so many things. But the thing is, until you try them out either physically or mentally in your mind, you really don't know whether you like it. You really don't know whether it's for you. You gotta kind of dip your toes in and just see, do I like this water over here? Do I like that water over there? What do I like?
Yeah, and within reason, try to do those things while you're still employed. I mean, it helps a lot if you're not just jumping, quitting, and saying, let me try something brand new. I teach people, hey, if you're trying to figure things out, the best time to do it is while you're currently still employed. It doesn't mean that you take advantage of or neglect your current employer. It's that as you're testing things out, and sometimes it's going to come down to making a job change, no question about it. It's going to be some things you have to just try, and that's what life is. Life is an experience. I think it's important to take stock and take note, however, of what's worked and what hasn't, so that you don't continue to repeat the same mistakes, if you will. What are you searching for? What is it that you're yearning after? You got to be very aligned so that you're not misguided and always misstepping and then finding yourself in more suffering that could be being created by some underlying subconscious thoughts that could be holding you back unconsciously, subconsciously. So it's important, I think, to think about all of that. What are your motivations? What are your passions? What are you really trying to accomplish? Can you do any of those things while you're currently still employed so you can test the waters out with a part-time job, start off one day a week while you're still working? Don't cause any undue stress on yourself by making irrational, knee-jerky, quick reactions if you can help it. But yeah, by all means, try things out. That's what life is here. We're here in a human playground for a reason. to live, to experience. I just don't want people to unnecessarily suffer if they don't have to.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Um, One of the things that we've been doing lately on the show, and we kind of got away from it yesterday because Monique and Pete, who were on, were just wonderful, and I had to tell their whole story, and they had such a great story. And yours is a great story too. But I'm still trying to get this other thing in. It's something we were doing about 2 years ago, something like that. We did it for a while. It got a good reaction, and then for some reason I kind of dropped it. And I'm getting back to it. I call it Q&A, and it can play out one of two ways. Either we get listeners who send questions in for us to address, or sometimes, more often than not, we'll go out and look on social media to see what are people struggling with in general on a wide range of topics, right? And I picked out a couple today that I thought might be interesting for you to address. So I'm kind of curious to see if this person had come to you, maybe this was somebody who was working in your hierarchy in your company, and they came to you and they said, I got this problem going on. What would you tell them? That's really what this is all about. Okay, ready for? Okay, he's rubbing his hands together. I think he's ready. Okay.
Have some fun with it. See what
all
it
right.
goes.
So let's see.
Best.
Oh, I'm sure your best is going to be great. All right. First one comes from somebody saying, so I joined this group. This is a Facebook group. She says, I joined this group to get a better understanding of a savings account. I'm looking for a good one that will earn me interest. We are wanting this account to save for a business we have in mind later in the future. So it should be in savings for about 8 years. I've heard that banks aren't my best interest, and maybe online accounts like Chime would be better, so any tips or help would be welcome. So really off the beaten path here, but what do you think about the question, and how would you respond to this person?
First things first, I'd say great that you're even thinking about savings. I think that's a big problem that most Americans in the world have. I think I saw some statistics that say if an emergency were to happen for somebody, if someone needed $500, they're having a hard time pulling that together as a family. So thinking proactively about what you need in the future, I think it's important to, and this is where I'll rationalize with my own mindset piece. You have this pendulum swing of life where you're going to have good times and you're going to have bad times. So whenever you're in a stable, good time, it's not very often that people think about savings because things are okay right now. And then you can get caught up in bad habits by spending and not really investing for your future. Likewise, whenever you're in a bad moment, all you're thinking about is just get me enough money to get by. I have to survive this. And then you tell yourself, whenever I get through this, I'm not going to let it happen again. And then somehow it happens again. I find that having looked at money and how it's worked for me, you do want to compound the interest as best as you can. So I do think if you can find a way to get into a 401k of some type that you have a company match. A lot of companies don't do them these days, but I work for one that actually still does, to where you can sometimes even get banks that have 401k programs to where you can get a 3% match, a 4% match, a 5% match. How ours works is you get dollar for dollar on the first 3% and then half on the next two. So it's essentially a 4% dollar for dollar match. If you can take advantage of a savings plan where you get better than just simple interest, you're going to see a compound effect that matures quicker over time. So while I'm not a financial advisor or a financial expert, I look at how do you get the money to work for you in the best way possible. If you can find ways to invest in those kinds of accounts, different types of accounts. I don't know all the names of all the specific ones. You have different IRAs and different 401ks that a lot of financial advisors will give you the advice. And sometimes you got to pay for that service. Usually it's a pretty nominal fee up front to say, hey, what are all my best options? But don't go into it blindly. I would say the person's doing the right thing by just going into some groups to get opinions, but be careful. Everybody's going to have an opinion. Everybody's going to tell you what they think. And a lot of times they're just making comments to try to make comments. They don't really have your best interests in mind. But the fact that this person's looking at it and trying to get ahead, they have a number set. They know how much it's going to take. The last thing I'll say is that if you can look at your life in general and say, where am I wasting? Where am I really actually spending money where I shouldn't be? I have a coffee problem. Every day I go to this place that's certain, they have a green emblem on the cup and it costs me $5 or so. If I needed to, I could cut that out and save $5 a day. I know I could. So what habitual, repetitive things, even if it was a bank account that's working on just interest alone, could you then double up on by putting in more? And one more thing, if you ever get a raise and you really don't need the money at that exact point in time, take the additional funds, that's say a 3% raise, add that to your savings. don't touch it. Those are some just best practices from the top of my head. You can go down the paths of other, I'm sure, best practices, but that's my initial response. Just
That's
coming
good.
out,
No, I like
off
that.
the cuff.
Yeah, that's very good. I might add a couple of ideas. One idea is, like you pointed out, you can get all kinds of opinions online, but I'd be looking for opinions from people who've actually been there and done it. I think
Yeah,
it's a
for sure.
mistake usually to take advice from somebody who hasn't been there. And especially if it's money advice from somebody who has not succeeded with money. That's like, to me, a big red flag. I used to, years ago, take advice from people who had not succeeded with money, and I paid the price for it. I've since learned my lesson. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah,
You
you
can
just
make
don't know who on there, who they are, unless you know them
right.
specifically. You're do a little bit of research for yourself. That's
Yeah.
always critical as well too.
Yeah, find out who you're talking to. We live in an age where, because of concerns about privacy and what the big companies are doing with the data and so forth, everybody wants to hide who their identity is. And so everybody feels like, well, you'll never find out who anybody is. But actually, the people who really do know what they're doing and want to be known for the fact that they know what they're doing, they don't hide. They make themselves very visible, very transparent. So you really can do the research and find out who really does know this stuff. Find out what they're, show me what you've actually done. Show me that you actually have the ropes, and they'll show you if they've got the background that they can say, yeah, I've done it. Here's what I did. They'll show you. Not a big problem. Yeah.
One more real quick thing is mindset wise. Try to get yourself out of the habit of needing to keep up with the Joneses. I have talked a lot about this idea of newest TVs, newest phones, and what's really happened in the marketing world of creating controlled obsolescence so that we're always chasing the new shiny thing. I was famous for saying I had my iPhone 7 for years past when it was time for an upgrade. I finally got a 13 because mine dropped and cracked and I just couldn't fix it. But if it works, I don't need the newest stuff. You can save tons of money by not getting caught up in that must have because the neighbors have it and I don't feel like I'm cool enough if I have it too. You may not admit that inside, but deep down in there, that ego is telling you, yeah, I like to have that too. So just be mindful of this.
It's a great point, and in fact, the way you framed it earlier, reminded me of something. I was actually talking with Monique and Pete after we did the show yesterday, and they were asking about my story, how I got my podcast going, and so forth. My listeners have heard this story before. I'll just give it like the real quick overview. Is that I had started a business. My wife is both of us had started businesses in 2002. 2008 wiped us both out entirely. We were deep in debt by 2012, and that's when I started the podcast with the idea of, well, let's bring on successful people who can teach me what to do, and that's really what got LOA Today going. But along the way, I was deep in debt, and I had to get out of debt. And that's one of the things that you talk about in the world of law of attraction. You've attracted all this debt. How do you get rid of the debt that you've attracted? How do you start attracting the abundance? And I struggled with that for years. I talked with a lot of people who are experts and who are helping me through. And what happened was really, really odd the way the whole thing got paid off, because was literally chipping away tiny amounts. Year by year, the debt wasn't going down by large chunks. It was going down by like 0.2%. I was doing everything I could, but I just wasn't making a lot of progress. One thing that did help, sadly, my mom passed, but gladly there was a bit of estate money that came there. That ended up paying about half of it, so that was good. But I still had the other half to pay. And right after my mom passed, like 9 months later is when the pandemic hit. And everything's shutting down. And that meant incomes were going down. Now, I'm self-employed. My wife's self-employed. So in that sense, we weren't losing our job or anything like that. But our income was substantially reduced. And, like everybody, we're getting the government money and all that kind of stuff. But still, it was struggle time. And yet, I was doing all this work on myself. And I had been for all these years. And getting myself into a much better mind space and so forth. And by some miracle, I was able to get completely out of debt by last May. And I thought to myself, what did I do? How did I do that? I know I really made it a concerted effort, but nevertheless, I couldn't quite account for it. Now, I actually keep records, so I track all my expenses and all my income and so forth. So I went back to my records, and I was able to account for about half of that half. So like half of it was paid off with my mom's estate. The remaining part, half of that, I could account where I got that money from. The other half, I couldn't account where it came from. I could see the expenses, I could see the income, but I couldn't say, where's the difference here, especially since our income overall is down. And then After focusing on it for like a 2-week, 3-week period, it finally hit me. I had gotten to the point where I was so happy in my life, despite everything going on, despite being in the middle of a pandemic, I was in such a good space that I wasn't spending stupid money anymore. You know how you get into a bad place and you go get an ice cream, you get an extra coffee, or you do something dumb and you have to pay, to fix something that you broke, or there's all these little things that happen because you're not in your best mindset, and so you're just stumbling over yourself and basically causing yourself expenses you would not normally incur. And when you take those out of the way, it turns out it pays off a quarter of the debt. And that blew my mind.
So incredible. It's so incredible when you just pay attention. And if you had to write down every single thing you were spending money on before you bought it, you would see it. There are some app tracking devices and things like that. When you get to a better place, it's not as important to probably pay attention as long as net what's coming in is higher than what's going out month after month. It's important to know that. But you're right. Well, just paying attention, because it's mindless sometimes. And then we have technology where apps and things auto update, and you're not even sure where your money's going sometimes, which is crazy but true.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still blown away at how much we ended up saving by not being in a bad frame of mind.
When you really get down to what you need to spend money on, absolutely need it, you will make the right decisions if it really comes to it. And I don't want people to struggle in it, but if you want to really get ahead and really 10x yourself in the next 5 years, look at what you really need and how much of it's egoic wants, and you'll save a ton of money. I'm saying have fun. Give yourself a treat every now and again. You got to live life. It can't be that much of a struggle.
Because I did it. I mean, when I was not making progress, when I was just barely making a little bit of improvement every year, I was scrimping and saving like crazy. I mean, I pinch every single penny out to the nth degree, but that also has a counterproductive side to it, because the more that you do that, like you say, you got to feed your soul, you got to feed your life. You're here to live a life, so you actually have to make sure there's a balance there, and you really are feeding that by allocating that money that way. The part that blows my mind as I look back on it is I didn't realize how much of that penny pinching was causing me to spend money that I would not have otherwise spent. Yeah. That's the part that blows my mind. It still does to this day.
Whenever you stop and think about it, it does come down to abundance and lack. There are in the law of attraction space, I'm sure you and many of your listeners know this. If you focus on lack, you're going to get more lack. Right. There's too many people in the world who say, if I only just have enough to get by, and they're not thinking about what that's doing in their mindsets. They're really only going to have enough to get by because they're choosing it to be so, whether it's attracted to them in that way or they're missing the opportunities that they're not seeing to have more. They're saying no to things that might bring more, and they're not saying yes to those things instead. So you got to look at it as, no matter what situation you're in, and I know this is hard mindset wise, but think of yourself abundant presently. I am abundance. I am overall abundance. We use this thing called money to make the world work, but I have enough of it not to get by, but to prosper, to live, to have all the things that I know I need for a life well lived. And slowly, day after day, that consciousness will be reaffirmed. You'll see things differently. You'll make things differently. Things come into your life differently. New opportunities come into your life. That's the power, I think, of the law of attraction. It doesn't always happen overnight, although I've manifested stuff overnight as well, too. It's just, where's the heart set and the mindset coming from in that space? Is it egoic, or is it, what do you want to do with that money? That's the difference. But think with abundance, it makes a massive, massive improvement. I know it's hard if you're not there. You can change that in the present moment only. So you got to think of it that way.
So let's carry this theme a little bit further, because I have another question from another group, completely different group, but it's kind of the same lines of a money type question. And again, I'm going to be very curious to see what your answer is. So this person, the group has an interesting name. The group is called A Group Where You Anonymously Ask for Advice. That's what the whole group is all about.
Okay.
And the question is written by a man who says, I'm the main income and pay all regular bills except the mortgage. My wife makes about $750 a month on her side craft/hobby business. Plus she gets 2 times what the mortgage is monthly and covers that and uses the rest for luxuries. I give her $200 a week for gas and food for 5 days for a family of 4. I usually buy food Friday night to cook Saturday and Sunday for our family. I saved up for our weekend trip to Thunder Beach, which is a big biker event, and surprised her with tickets a month or two ago and told her the only drawback is you need to save money on your end to help us out with food and drinks. The trip is next weekend, and I know she hasn't saved anything. I know I can move bills around and try to make it work and fun still, but it's going to be even more stress on me playing catch up. So what would you do if you were me? Do I keep her home and go myself? And he puts in parentheses, nailing in the coffin, LOL. Then he says, do I sell the tickets and cancel the trip? In parentheses, I will be angry, but usually get over things quickly. Do we both just go and make it, and I make it work financially? And in parentheses, he says, I think it will bother me every time I buy something. Please give me some honest advice. So there's a really interesting dynamic of stuff going on there. But what's your take on that one?
Just upon first hearing it, first of all, kudos for surprising the wife. I think that's awesome that you were able to put together an event that would be a great thing for her and you to experience in life. Sounds like you both enjoy it, both want to do it. So here's where my mind automatically goes to this without knowing all the intricate details. And I heard some of the different challenges as far as mortgages and making ends meet and moving funds around. What it comes down to for me ultimately is live life. Okay. Don't live it so irresponsibly. If it was in your heart, in your gut, feeling like you just shouldn't do this, then don't do it. I look at it as I put out intentions whenever I'm not sure of something, be it a monetary means, big decision, move, life events. How I use the law of attraction to my benefit is I look for reaffirming signs. And it could be in a meditative process. It could be just focused thought for 5 to 10 minutes of intentful thought of I need an answer, and be specific. What is it going to be specifically that is a sign of yes or a sign of no? That can help you reaffirm from a higher power, a higher place, a law of attraction space to where you can, if you're again tuned in enough from a law of attraction basis standpoint, from heart and mind, to where you have the right intentions and you're seeking the right answers for those intentions. I think this stuff works. Not I think, I know it works. I know it works for me. I've written about it in my book. I've had real life experiences where I've received amazing signs from the universe reaffirming what I should do. I also try to not get paralyzed by inaction. I also think that whenever it comes to life and needing to do what you want to do to live it and have a life well lived, find a way to do it. If you're passionate about doing this, I guarantee it. I don't know. I shouldn't say I guarantee, but I would be willing to bet you can go do this, have an amazing experience that you're probably going to talk about forever with your loved one, and you could probably make some tweaks along the way. And then if you really are a person of the right mindset and the universe is rewarding you, you're going to probably be surprised, or maybe you won't be. And some amazing gift comes your way unexpectedly where people want to say, wow, what a crazy coincidence that was. Even though it's no coincidence at all. That's the universal way of the power saying, hey, we took care of you, you're fine. But it does take some faith. As long as that intention is coming from the right place, I say do it. I say do it, enjoy it, have fun. Do be responsible. Don't put yourself into a bad situation. Make some ends meet, but go live your life. And if you're not sure, put out the heart intention to the universe and look for a sign specific. Ask for it within a certain amount of time or within reason and see what comes your way. That'll help you feel more reaffirmed in making your decision.
I like that. That's good. That's a good answer. I like it. It's a very positive, very affirmative answer. I like it a lot. I'll tell you, I had a little bit of a different take on it. I like the conclusion of, go live the life. I think that's a good piece of advice. I actually got the sense that there was a little manipulation going on here. Like, this is a guy, just the way he laid the whole thing out, he has already in his mind divided, okay, here's what I pay for, here's what she pays for, it's all very carefully worked out, and I gave her this task to do, all she had to do was this task, and she fell down on the job. And the first question that went through my mind was, really, she agreed to that? Because nothing in your description said that. Everything was about you laying out, this is the way it's going to be. And the reason I thought that way is, that was my mindset. Back when I was still struggling to pay off the debt, that was my mindset. I have to organize all of this stuff. And I have to make sure my wife is doing her part and all that kind of thing. It tears you down. It tears you down to live that way. Whereas when you just let go of all that stuff, just let go of all that. I mean, it's not like the bills aren't being paid. It's not like you're living in poverty. It's not like you're going deeper in debt like we were. You're actually living a pretty good life. Why are you stressing about the money? Where is the benefit in that?
And that unconsciously, maybe, I like your take on it too. That might be limiting him,
Yeah.
quite possibly. And without
Yeah.
any kind of not knowing a whole lot more facts about the person, I would just advocate that they take stock of, is this a necessary behavior?
Yeah.
Is this a limiting aspect of energy and thought that's going to keep me entrapped in that limiting life belief of got to keep it all together? This person probably has experienced loss at some point in time and has
Sure.
struggled, does not want to get back to it. But again, by focusing on it, you will attract more of that into
Exactly.
your life.
Yeah. Because I've also experienced loss, big loss, huge loss. I know what that's like. But I also had to learn the hard way that going the route of trying to measure everything out with a teaspoon only undermines you.
Yeah.
It never actually helps. It
It's a
never
thought
actually
process
produces
of
the
lack.
result. It is. It's all
Yeah,
lack.
it's a lack thought process that
Yeah.
will likely continue. So it's just
Yeah.
it's just important to call it for what it is, be accountable to it, look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, am I limiting myself some way? And
Yeah.
you're right, as long as you got enough goodness in place and you're not
Yeah.
burning down the establishment here by making a poor decision, then don't be so critical of yourself. Live
Right.
life.
Yeah. I mean, unless this is one hell of an expensive biker trip, how expensive could it be?
It could be.
You know, I
Don't
mean,
know.
but it's a weekend trip. I mean, I don't know. Are you spending $1,000 on it? Okay, well, maybe, but even so, how much of that is that a percentage of your overall income for the year, and you're setting yourselves up for this really nice event? Is that really worth stressing about? Because that's what I used to do. I used to stress about that stuff like crazy, so that even if I did go on an event like that, I mean, I'm not a biker, but if I went into an event like that, I was stressing through the event. I wasn't enjoying the event. I was too concerned with whether or not we were paying the bills for it. And of course, that doesn't help.
Stress that comes from just that worry.
Yeah.
Worry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't ever advocate to live life unmeasured, but in terms of the anxiety, the stress, a lot of that is self-induced.
It is.
It's that inner critic saying you don't want to suffer again. You remember what happened last time, but then we don't grow, we don't learn by breaking out of it. And that's that comfort zone that it tries to keep us in. It's not about being irresponsible. It's about learning from past mistakes, putting new actions into place, and then knowing that's your new programming. You don't have to worry anymore until you have a reason to worry. And then you take pause, make the best decision possible, learn from that, and move on with life. You cannot dwell in the past. It's not healthy to do so.
No, because you can't live in the past. Even when you think you're living in the past, you're living in the present, but you're living in the present as if it were the past. So you're basically setting yourself up for the past, which is probably not what you had in mind in the first place. It's a great point, though. It's a really great point. We have so many different ways that we set ourselves up. And we have a very strong human tendency to keep repeating the same patterns over and over again. That shows up in my life a lot. I imagine it has shown up in your life too. And I think probably one of the most important things we can do is to recognize the patterns, to notice them for what they are. Because you talked about getting signs and signals. There's a sign and a signal right there. You got the same thing happening over and over again. No matter who you deal with, you end up with the same result. That's where I say to myself, you know what? What's the common denominator in this puzzle? Oh, that's right. It's me. I'm the one factor that is common to all these different scenarios that keep coming out the same way. So it can't be the scenarios anymore.
Recognize that. You got to call it out for self-improvement. You have to come to the table with the accountability of looking in the mirror again and saying, what do I have to change? And a lot of people just don't want to face that fact that there is something that they're doing repetitively. It's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to have a different outcome. And let's not become insane people. Let's really change a lot of those actions that are driving that repetition of negativity inside of your life. It doesn't have to be. It's self-perpetuated.
It's true. It's very true. Okay, I got one more for you. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about toward the beginning of the conversation, where you were talking about finding your passion and finding what motivates you and so forth. Well, this guy, he's in school, he's in college, and he has a big motivation problem. Actually, I'm not sure if it's a he or she, but they posted in a group called "Breaking the Mental Health Stigma." Interesting choice for posting this message. But here's what it says: "It says, what can I do to force myself to do my college work? I'm never motivated to do it, and it really sucks. I'm finishing up incomplete work from last semester due to a mental breakdown. I took the semester off to get this incomplete work done. It's due in July. I have 2 8-page papers and then some book essays and reflections and a 3 to 4-page paper, and I'm so overwhelmed. So what would you say to the college student?
And I could go so many different places with that. One, what are you going to school for?
Yeah, that was my thought.
Are you taking up something you're passionate about? Or are you doing it because you feel like you have to? Is it your parents who are driving this? It sounds to me like the person's not motivated because they don't want to do the things that they're being asked to do. Now, I understand as being a college grad myself, even though it happened at age 34, that there's some aspects that you have to get through, like general education stuff. Like I understand you're not going to love all the college courses, but if these are major type courses, like what you're going to school for, maybe you're misaligned in terms of where you think you should be at in life. So I would definitely reevaluate, what are you going to college for? Are you doing it because that's what everybody says you're supposed to do? That's one of the biggest mindsets that I talk about in the book as well, is whose life are you living? You know, a lot of parents want the best for us. They think going to college is the best for us, but we got to be careful. And I'm not against education. I am for the proper type of learning. I think that we fit everybody into a box and we say, you're supposed to graduate high school, go to college, get a car, buy a house, have kids, and live happily ever after. But the problem with that process in today's world is that you're coming out of college $120,000 in debt. You're not even sure you're going to use your degree. And there's so many other ways to educate yourself. Are you doing it because you think you have to, like you need the paper to qualify you? For some work, yes. You know, if you're going to be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, I hope that you go get your college degree that says you're qualified to do those things. But there's so many skill sets in life that if you're passionate about exploring, you can get through experience. You can get through learning online from teachers online at a lot less the fee. So what are you going after? Is it the stigma of I have to graduate college or else I'm not going to be a success? Because again, I'm a high school dropout that to this day nobody has ever asked me for a piece of paper to do the job that I'm doing. And I'm responsible for tens of millions of dollars of profit, hundreds of millions in terms of overall top line revenue. And no one has once questioned my education. That's me, that's my story, that's my life. But the day I wake up and I'm unmotivated and unpassionate to do what I'm doing, I'm going to reevaluate why I'm doing it. Because I bet you this individual, if it was something that they loved doing, they were naturally going to jump out of bed excited to go do it. So it's a tough question to answer, but if I'm that person, I'm going to take stock and say, whose life am I living? Why am I even engaged in this? Should I not do it? Maybe I should take a step back, pause, and reevaluate myself. There was a mention of a mental breakdown. That's a big sign right there. Something could be misaligned in that person's life. So non-judgmentally, I would definitely say take a step back and reassess where your values are and why you're doing what it is that you're doing in the first place.
I like that. I agree with that entirely. In fact, I would even take it a step further and ask, what would you like to do instead?
There you go.
I mean, you're not really happy with what you're doing right now. That's pretty clear. Otherwise, you'd be motivated to do it. So if you know, take college out of it for the moment, take career out of it, take parents out of it, take all that stuff out of it, and just go back to the one very basic question: what would you like to do instead? What would really, you know, wake you up in the morning? What would make you say, yeah, I want to do more of that because I like that.
That's just it, man. It's so many people. I want to help shake it out of them that life has put this template in front of us that says, if you want to be successful, this is the way you have to go do it. I am living proof it does not need to be that way. And there are millions of others out there like me who are breaking the system. Now, you got to be thoughtful in what you're doing. You have to know what it is that you want and seek out the right avenues to help you get qualified to get there. But we don't often do our own thinking. We're often just led and pushed. This is the way that it is. This is the way that it is. This is the way it's always been. This is the way it's going to always be. And we just wander through life unhappy because we're not stopping to say, can I do this a different way? The answer is yes, you can. But you have to be bold enough to be the puzzle piece that doesn't fit quite perfectly and be uncomfortable in the sense that you can do it a different way. But it does take, you know, some gumption and some fortitude. and the understanding of what it is that you want to do. So you're right. If you were to say, what is it I would do instead? Then go explore those avenues. At least at worst, change your major.
Yeah.
Go to college for a different major, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. This actually kind of ties in really to your overall theme, what you call the ungraduated theme. Because ungraduating is basically the unlearning, right? And unlearning is really taking what you learned that isn't really paying off and working for you and replacing it with what does. So talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, early on, you mentioned where the word even came from, and it did come to me as a epiphany, a strike of lightning, if you will. I was down in my gym working out, just thinking about how can I create a message that can resonate, that ties to my life story, but really can help catch people's attention to say, what is it in life that you have been taught that may not any longer be serving you? I don't think everything that you learn in life is bad, but there are a lot of limiting things in life. And the whole aspect of becoming ungraduated is looking at the system that life has laid out in front of us. And I say life meaning mankind has told us this is the way it's supposed to work. I'm a spiritual person. I'm not religious, but spiritual in the aspect of I want to do my higher self's calling. I want to feel my purpose and I want to go live that life. And I don't want to listen to man all the time. Now, there are tried and true methods and things that work, and I take the best of that, apply it, and then I look at what's not serving me, and I want to get rid of it in terms of removing myself of the limitations, the things like money is the root of all evil. No, it's not. The user is the person who creates the evil, not the money. All mankind is born in sin. In my opinion, no, we're not. We're a human experience trying to figure out life and become better. But a lot of this stuff comes from indoctrinations and different societal labels and organizations that have been very emphatically pressuring upon humankind what we are not good at and what we should be good at and how we should live life. And the whole aspect of becoming ungraduated is living a life on your terms, discovering your purpose, and really becoming empowered into what it is that you're passionate about doing. Because success is different for everybody. So it's not always about money. It could be about happiness. It could be about peace of mind. It could be about vitality and health. We talk about all those things because we're learning a whole lot more about life that wasn't taught to me whenever I was in school. So the idea of being ungraduated is a little bit of a pun as a high school dropout, having made it in life, but not by societal norms. So I just want people to take pause and say, is this the way that it's really supposed to be? And that's everything. Just do your homework. And if you can find it through your own experiences that you've lived, that's good for you. So whose life are you living? Again, is it somebody else's? Are you just living off of theory? Or have you put proofs into your life of truths that can become your experiences? And people may look at it and say, well, hey, that's just his theory. Not if it's a truth for you, not if you've experienced it. Graduated is just about experiencing your own truths, walking your own path in life towards more freedom, happiness, success, money, whatever defines reason for being for you.
Absolutely fabulous. This is a great way to wind things up today. So that was brilliant. Before we part company, though, you can't just let us let you go out the door without finding out where people can find out more about you. You got a book out by the same name. I'm sure you have other forms of contact for people who want to reach out. How do they find you?
Yeah, so right now the website's being redone. It should be done any week now.
Okay.
Little snafu. It's ungraduated.com. It was a blog, and then as I transformed this, trying to create a community, I want it to be a community website. So it's going to house all the information. But for right now, if you go to it, I have a message on there that's basically being revamped and will be out soon. But do take note of ungraduated.com because it is where everything will live about this community that I am aiming to form of like-minded people who want to challenge the status quo, who want to be better. But if you are interested in like what you're hearing, the book was released in February, Ungraduated, Finding Your Why, and Dropping Out of Outdated Belief Systems. It's available on Amazon with Kindle, paperback, hard copy, and audio form. I'd be happy to give you a free download. If you DM me, find me on Facebook. I have free promo codes to give people. For me, it's not about making money. It's about trying to share a very powerful message that I think has helped me. And if, again, you like what you're hearing, check out the podcast. It's Ungraduated Living and Learning, available on all different podcast players of your choice, major and subsidiary. that's about all the ways that you can reach out. I'm on all the well, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook's Ken Hannaman. Instagram is at Ungraduated Living. So I said a whole lot there, but in the end of it all, once that dang website's perfectly done, that's where you'll find everything about me.
And we'll get a link to that into the show notes so that even if they couldn't capture all that, they'll find the website. And I'm sure that'll have the link to everything else. So that's the best part.
It will.
So thank you, Ken, for joining us today. This has been a wonderful conversation. I've very thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you and appreciate your time because the time that you give doing this, it demonstrates you basically have put the pedal to the metal. So yeah, okay, not only am I saying go out and be of service to the world, you're being of service to the world. So thank you for that.
It was a pleasure being here, Walt. Love getting to know you. I hope we can continue to connect and follow each other in this great journey called life. But yeah, this is what I love doing. So I will always make time for it. And thank you again for having me.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you. And thank you to our podcast listeners who tuned in because, hey, you guys, you're the ones who keep me going for doing a podcast in the first place. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.